Do you struggle with anxiety or feel an internal pressure to be doing more and achieving more like all of the time? No matter how many milestones you achieve or tasks you check off of your to-do list, you still feel a nagging sense of emptiness in your soul. I know this sounds dramatic, but I also know you can probably relate. Many high-achieving, perfectionistic, deeply empathic business owners have spent their entire lives following someone else's roadmap. You're doing everything right, achieving every goal right on time, but eventually you reach the end of that roadmap and realize it's time to pave your own way. But how do you start playing by your own rules when you've spent your entire life doing what someone else told you to do? How do you continue creating, producing, and achieving, but on your own terms? Today's deeply rested guest has the answer to these questions. Meet Danielle McGeough, PhD, award-winning professor, self-leadership coach, and co-author of the textbook Gender and Communication. As the creator of the Rise Ritual Method and host of the Plan Goal Plan podcast, Danielle empowers individuals and teams to bridge the gap between intention and action through clarity, courageous boundaries, and consistent renewal. In response to her own existential disappointment after getting tenure as a professor, combined with a painful battle with postpartum anxiety, Danielle took a deep dive into the world of planning, goal setting, and productivity. But what she found there wasn't the same toxic, hustle-driven propaganda we're all used to hearing about. Danielle discovered a way to plan her life and achieve her goals using the power of intentional rituals. Instead of teaching you how to form habits and create lofty 5-year plans, Danielle shares her deep wisdom about becoming more conscious, slowing down, and bringing creativity and play into her rituals and personal goals. Honestly, this is the only conversation I've ever had about planning that left me feeling calm, inspired, and super playful. Enjoy this deeply rested conversation with Danielle McGeough. Welcome to Deeply Rested, the podcast that helps people doing good work in the world take incredibly good care of themselves. I'm your host, retired therapist and disillusioned business coach, Megan Megginson. I'm on a mission to help people like you unlearn the rules that keep you trapped in self-doubt so that you can recover from burnout and finally become deeply rested. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and join our weekly newsletter at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. Now, it's time for the show. Hi, Danielle.
Hello.
Welcome to Deeply Rested.
I'm excited to be here.
I am so thrilled that you are here. You are a fascinating, multifaceted human being. And I know you have an incredible story and some wisdom that I'm excited to learn from about rituals and how we can use rituals to live healthier, fuller, richer lives. Well, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Danielle, tell me about the day that you earned tenure as a professor.
Ooh, so it was a big day, but maybe not as big as I expected it to be. So I decided that I wanted to be a professor when I was probably like 20 years old. And I didn't really realize what I was committing to at the time. I didn't realize that meant that I was probably going to have another decade of school. I didn't realize that meant that I'd probably move across the country, that I would be living on a graduate student salary into my, early 30s. I didn't know that the job market for higher ed professionals was as competitive and hard as it is. And I didn't really know all that it would take to earn tenure. And so when I earned tenure that day, when I got the letter saying that I had been approved, there was great relief, but I think that I expected an elation, a feeling of I did it. And instead, I kind of just felt lost. I actually felt like I don't know what's next. I felt like, oh, I have grinded, I have hustled, I have made all sorts of sacrifices. And I think there's a little part of me that was like, whoa, like, this is it.
Did that conflict with the way your friends and family were responding to this milestone?
I was very fortunate. So my partner is also an academic, and we are in tenure at the same time. And so there was actually lots of celebration. And my family was really excited for me. My husband was really excited for me. We had a big old celebration dinner. And, some of it was that I had also just had my first kiddo and I was exhausted. And so it was interesting because it almost felt like I was watching all of the celebrations, but like almost like I was reading it in a book where I was like standing outside of it looking in.
Yeah, that's just what I was sensing, that you thought the day you got tenure would be this huge celebration. That's what you were expecting, elation. And then it happened, and your internal experience was very, very different. I was imagining everyone around you being in that celebratory place because they are mirroring you, right? They're mirroring what they think they're supposed to do to meet you with support and love and encouragement. So there's this dual experience where there's like a part of you, I'm guessing, that felt that love from the people around you, felt the celebration, knew that you had just achieved something major, but then also maybe a loneliness at having such a different experience that other people maybe weren't tracking as clearly as they were tracking the celebration?
Absolutely. I think that I also just had for so long a clear direction that I was moving in and some clear steps that I could take to kind of get to that thing. And so all of a sudden, there was this freedom in getting to decide what was next.
Yeah.
But in the process of going and going and going, I also had sort of dissociated from my own, I think, desires and dreams. And so all of a sudden, I think I looked up and I was like, okay, what do I want? And I don't have to decide what I want based on these other expectations of me. And I didn't know what that was. So I definitely did feel alone, but I also did still feel supported.
Yeah.
It's definitely, yes, it's both and.
Yeah. I think that's what's so interesting about these experiences in our lives is, over-functioning, perfectionistic type A achievers, that we all have these moments where on paper, we did it. Like we did it. Like we checked all of the boxes. We got to the end of the roadmap. And we are so proud of ourselves, and everyone around us is so proud of us, the people that love us and support us. And it's true that we feel that, but it also, these moments illuminate the well of emptiness inside that we haven't been, the parts of us that we haven't been attending to because we were so busy following someone else's degree plan or someone else's roadmap. In fact, I've heard you in other interviews talk about the undercurrent of emptiness that you felt in your life. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I think that when you're looking for fulfillment from external sources, it is like trying to fill up a well where there's a giant leak in the bottom, right? And so I think that for me, I don't know that I was aware at the time that I was expecting this to give me this sense of fulfillment and accomplishment, and that I was tying my worth to all of these different milestones. Yeah. And what's wild about it too is like, I'm someone who's easily interested. I get really excited about things easily. I don't get bored very easily. And so, when people would ask me like to take on these projects, it wasn't like I was just taking on a project because it would check off a box to earn me tenure. Like I really was interested. It's just that when all of a sudden I didn't also need it to check off the boxes, I was like, well, would I really do it?
Right.
And so it prompted me, and I'm actually really grateful for it, to say, hey, there are these gaps. There is this undercurrent of emptiness. Yeah. What's going on there? And when we move into whatever is next, we need to do it a little bit differently.
Let's take the lens and zoom out a little bit here around this moment in your life, because getting tenure was only one big box that you were checking on the list of things to accomplish in life. That was just one box. You had also checked having a great marriage. And you had also checked having an adorable baby. Check. So here you are in this season of life where you are reaching the end of lots of different roadmaps. So you're in your mid-30s and it's like you've arrived, like 20-year-old Danielle is so proud of 35-year-old Danielle. She's like, you did it. You fucking did it. You checked all the boxes, and there it's just amplified, right? This feeling of I did everything I'm supposed to do. Woof. Why then am I feeling this undercurrent of emptiness? Why do I not know myself enough to have an intuitive sense of what I want to work on next, or where I want to go next, or what I want to do next? It's that, did you feel a little bit crazy during that time? Like, was there anxiety that was showing up for you as you were realizing the disconnect between what you had accomplished and the undercurrent of emptiness?
Absolutely. To note, I actually did get diagnosed with postpartum anxiety. So I was dealing with diagnosed anxiety at the time.
Uh-huh.
At some point, I realized I needed to figure it out. And then I put this pressure on myself, as many of us like type A overachievers do, is, oh, well, like now I need a 5-year plan. And I think that then I put on this pressure to figure out, well, you need to know what the 5-year plan is.
Right.
And then that felt like a huge decision. And I think that then I even amped it up, well, what are all of the things that you want to do before you retire? And then, of course, yes, there's like these personal things, being a good parent, being a good partner, thinking about, is this where we want to live? What kind of home do I want to live in? What's my relationship to stuff? And I kind of felt like, oh, well, I just got to figure this all out.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went through this process where I put a lot of pressure on myself to feel like I needed to figure it out. And then somewhere along the way, I think through practices of journaling and reflection and having like rituals that helped ground me some, I actually did come to a place where I was comfortable not knowing.
I want to talk more about the not knowing. But before we do, I want to shine a light on this part of your journey, because I feel like so many of us have this exact experience where you realize up until this point of your life, everything has been prescribed for you. And this is so true for those of us who go to grad school, work in academia. It's, okay, you go to high school and you have your plan. You have your little high school degree plan. Okay, here's exactly what you're going to do when, so that you can graduate high school. And then you jump into college and it's the same thing. Okay, let's make the degree plan. It's like, here's exactly what you're going to do each semester. These are the steps you're going to take. These are the classes you're going to take. These are the internships you're going to complete in order to get to the end of this journey. And then you go to grad school, and then maybe you work in academia, and it's just this conditioning, right? Of like, someone else hands you the roadmap and you're like, cool, like thumbs up. It's such a treat when someone's like, here's exactly what you need to do. But there is a conditioning that happens inside of us. And then we have this awakening that you're describing, which can be really intense and dark and anxiety and scary. And it's when we realize that life actually doesn't have roadmaps, like that life doesn't actually follow a degree plan. And right when we reach the top, when we reach the point where we get tenure, literally or figuratively, and we think like, oh, now we can relax, is when we actually drop to the bottom of that well and realize there are so many things we haven't been paying attention to in our lives. And that's a scary moment, right? It's intense.
It's super scary. And along the way, I think that I also kind of was really confronted with the myth of meritocracy, right? So it was also through that journey where I first learned that sometimes you can check all the boxes and that doesn't guarantee you getting the thing that you thought that you earned. We kind of talk a lot about like entitlement in society, right? for me, I was like, well, entitlement is when you think that you're owed something, but you haven't worked for it, right? And I had to kind of come to terms with, when we finished our PhDs, like when we had started, they sort of said, hey, if you can just come out with degree in hand and a published journal article, you're going to have no problem getting jobs. Well, 2008 hit and there was a recession and housing market was banana pants and all of these things happened. And all of a sudden, hey, now if you want to get a job, you're probably going to have to publish a few more articles, have degree in hand. And by the way, it still may not happen. And then my partner is also an academic. So we didn't need to get just one job. We needed to get two and probably in the same place. One, I kept seeing like the goalposts changing, but also like for the first time, I was like, oh, I crossed off all the boxes, but that doesn't necessarily earn me the thing. It doesn't give me the thing.
How did you feel about that?
And, I was resentful.
I was
rage.
resentful. A little rage was
up. Absolutely. I had all sorts of rage, like I was Mrs. Ragey Pants, right? Like, I think that,
I love a pair of rage pants, by the way.
We all need to have a good pair of Eden pants, a good pair of rage pants, right?
Yeah.
And I think that like, it's not like I hadn't worked for things and been told no before.
Sure.
But it was the first time that I was like, oh my gosh, all my friends, they had bought houses and they were having kids. And I was living in a crappy apartment in a place that I love living. We got our PhDs at LSU in Baton Rouge, and I loved Baton Rouge. But like, we didn't really get to choose where we wanted to live. We couldn't be like, oh, I want to live near my family. Yeah. You just like went where you had to go. And jobs afterwards were going to be like that too. And so I felt like I'd made all of these sacrifices and I'd done all the right things. And like, gosh darn it, I don't have control over it. Yeah. And so I think you take me to that tenure moment too, that like I had moved through all of these disappointments and kind of coming to terms with like the myth of meritocracy. So like I'd done all of that and I was grateful for all the things I learned along the way. But I also was like, wow, that was a whole lot. Yeah. Was this worth it? Like, was this moment? Why did I do this? Yeah. Who was I trying to prove what to? Yeah. Is it the job stability? I think I had to work through all of that too.
Yeah, it's like you're doing like an autopsy on this like part of your life that's done, that's reached the end and you're going back and it's like, wait, what? You're like digging inside. Why? What happened? Why did I do that? While you're nursing a newborn and nursing your postpartum anxiety, I mean, that is such a chaotic place to be internally, to be going through all of that change and transformation at one time. I mean, this is a massive reckoning in your life. It's all slamming into you. It's like, I always think of, you remember the Roadrunner cartoon? Right? Yes. And like the Roadrunner is like running, and then he stops and then like 3 seconds later, everything he was carrying like slams into him. Yeah. One of those moments. Whoa.
Absolutely.
What is going on here? So you drop in to the well of emptiness and tell me if this feels wrong or insensitive in any way, but there's a part of me that's like, there was divine timing here with your postpartum anxiety, because the gift of anxiety sometimes is that it can shine a light on where we need to look in our lives. It helps us see, like, what is it right now that really needs my attention? Of course, it can quickly become not helpful at all. But there was just something, I think, so divine about the way all of this lined up in your life at this really tender moment. And it just took you to the bottom of that well, and you had no choice but to meet and commune with the mystery, with the unknown. Tell me more about the unknown and what that place is like for you now.
Oh, great question. It was a tender moment. And I do think that while the anxiety was incredibly challenging, and it's not something that I would want anyone else to have to move through, it did really highlight we can't stay where we are. And I had to get incredibly serious about my own well-being And it did prompt me to say, that's going to take priority. And so for me, that really did look like, seeing a therapist. It meant me learning to slow down in ways that I had never slowed down before, having a different relationship to rest, to my to-do list, to my productivity. I had to really create space and rituals in my life that were centered around my well-being. And some of that was absolutely for me. And some of that was going, I'm kind of miserable to be around. And for the people that I love that are around me and supporting me, I also need to do this for them.
I love the word highlighted. I'm just picturing that, right? And yes, like really painful moments in our life when we are struggling with something we wouldn't wish on our best enemy. Or sorry, our worst enemy. Who's our best enemy? I'll make a note to talk to my therapist about that later. You highlight, how can I take care of myself? Like that's what I'm seeing in all of this. What do I need for me, for my family? What do I need to do so that I feel happier? And so my relationships are fuller, so that I am the person in my relationships that I want to be. And you start changing the way you're making decisions, which is amazing. Start relaxing a little bit into the unknown. That relaxing into like, okay, life doesn't have a degree plan. Life doesn't have a tenure track. Like, let me just breathe. Let me loosen up a little bit. Let me just feel into the expansiveness of anything being possible. Let me feel into what is it that I need to be well, and what do I want my relationships to look like and to feel like. This, I think, was the time in your life when your love affair with planning and goal setting really began.
Yeah, it did.
Tell me about that.
I remember I have like this memory. It was really early in the morning, maybe like 3 a.m. And one of the consequences of my anxiety is I don't sleep much. And at some point, rather than sitting in bed and letting things spin, I had started to get up and I would journal. I would, get under a cozy blanket. I would make myself some hot tea. I had reframed it as, I'm just going to have a special moment with myself. And I like have this memory of, it being like 3 a.m. and having like my planners and journals out and all these stickers on my couch, and simultaneously being like, oh my gosh, I'm an adult and I'm healing myself by putting stickers on my planner. But, it was actually through this process, because I did need to do things like find a different way to navigate my to-do list, because when I was dealing with extreme anxiety and also parenting a newborn and navigating all of these other internal things, my brain just wasn't holding on to things. So before, I could just be like, oh, this is coming up, I'll just remember the date. I just could remember things. And all of a sudden, those same practices weren't working for me. And so I had to develop some new systems.
Yeah.
But I did that all through this lens of my well-being is my priority. And so as I was navigating, and because, I love to read, I was reading all of the productivity books. I was reading all the goal-setting books. As I was doing that, I still was doing it and putting them into practice through this lens of centering your well-being. And also, like, my academic background is really around how we can use creative forms of communication to engage in problem solving, community building, and personal and social transformation. So kind of unbeknownst to me, I also was like layering on all of my academic research around identity and social transformation to these like processes like planning and goal setting.
Wow. You are saying so many things right now that I'm just like, this is too much. I have so many follow-up questions. I'm slightly overwhelmed. Okay, let me say just a couple of things. What I'm hearing is that you intuitively, organically discovered that the only way you were going to make it through was to play.
Yes.
Tell me about your relationship with play.
So I'm a pretty playful person. All of my report cards describe me as unique. And when I was in third grade, I had this like little unique dance that I would do. And I've always just kind of been quirky and playful. And in fact, like even in my scholarships, my PhD is in communication, but in a funky little area called performance studies. And one of the reasons that I loved it is you could take all of these like very serious research articles and you would learn through, let's go ahead and, put that into our bodies and walk this idea around on a stage. So we were creating performance as a way to sort of learn and know. And it was always really playful and collaborative and connecting to other people. And so I do think that I've always seen play as a way to connect with myself and others. And for whatever reason, too, probably a little bit of neurodivergence. I don't have like the embarrassment button that other people have. And so because of that, I've always been willing to play publicly in a way that I think has been wildly helpful to me. And so when I did sit down and plan and set goals, I would think things like, okay, if I have to make a to-do list that's creating anxiety for me, how can I like put stickers on it? Or are there really pretty colored pens that I could use? And I'm not artsy fartsy, by the way. Like my dad was my art teacher growing up, but like I'm not like artsy like that. I love stickers because I was like, oh, they can look really fun, but I don't have to like know how to doodle.
Yes, I feel that. You have an effervescence about you. You're bubbly. And I see the way that you embody play in your natural state. And I love that in the darkest moment of your life, 4:00 in the morning, you're waking up, you're nursing, you're racked with anxiety, you're at the bottom of the well of emptiness. You're like, what did I just do? How did I get here? It's literally dark. It's emotionally dark. Everything is dark. And you go to play. There's just this intuitive knowing of like, okay, I have to do this. I also love this really pragmatic part of you that's like, okay, and we still have to find jobs, and I still have to feed this baby, and I still want to be happy. I'm centering my well-being, and centering my well-being will require effort. How am I going to get back into the flow of life where I'm doing and producing in a way that actually makes me feel good and doesn't trigger an avalanche of anxiety? And you moved right to creativity and play. And the other thing that's really powerful to me about this story is you dove in to the world of productivity, which, whoa, can be like a really overwhelming place to go. Because as soon as you open the door to productivity, you are just smacked in the face with time blocking systems and time management systems and task management softwares and productivity books and like on and on and on. All of the helpful things can crush us. But that didn't happen for you. Like you dove in to this world of productivity and planning and task management, and you found a way to make it work for yourself using creativity and play. Tell me more about that experience, how you were able to sift through the overwhelm of time management and planning to create a process for yourself that felt fun.
Yeah, well, I want to kind of give a shout out to one of my students. One of my students was actually giving a presentation on using decorative planning as a way to manage her anxiety. And I was like, oh, well, let's just like try this. I had already been a little bit into like the planning and productivity stuff. And so I was like, oh, well, yeah, let's add stickers, let's add fun markers, and let's just go. And I think that for me, I just approached all of this not as prescriptive, but as an experiment, that I am my own laboratory. And so if someone wants us to time block, let's try time blocking. Let's just like play around with it and see if it actually works for me. And I'll try out different ways. And, people would talk about delegating and automating and all of those different things too. And I would just kind of allow myself to operate in the space of like, well, what if I tried that? And I would try it on, and I would try on different planners and different tools. And, I'd learn about myself as I go. So I kind of asked myself, well, what did I learn by conducting this experiment about myself and about what works for me and what doesn't? And so for me, planning also really morphed from a time management activity to planning as personal development, because they were all experiments that I could conduct that would teach me more about myself, but would also help me get really thoughtful and intentional about how I wanted to spend my time. And it was really empowering for me to go, well, where do I have spaces of control that I can make decisions and say, this is what I want for my life, and I'm going to do it one little decision, one little time block at a time. And that wasn't always easy. And some things worked and some really didn't. And like through the process too, I very much realized too that none of this is one size fits all.
I am my own laboratory. That's what I'm taking away from this right now, that you stepped into this world as an experiment, and you were engaging with everything that you read with this curiosity, a real sense of curiosity, being like, okay, let me like look at time blocking. Like, is that an experiment I want to try in my laboratory? If yes, try it, but do it with just a light touch. It doesn't have to be so serious. Let's lower the stakes. Let's see how this feels. Is there a way I can adapt this and make it work for me? And if yes, great. And if not, no big deal. It's like I'm hearing that you don't let yourself go into a shame spiral about it not working for you. You don't personalize that it's not working for you. You really just are like picking up all of these blocks. I'm imagining you right now as like a little kid, like on a play mat, and there's all these like blocks and Legos in front of you, and you're just sort of picking up each one, and you're like, do I want to add that to my building? No thanks. Do I want to add this one? Well, let me see if it fits. And there's just this playfulness and this gentleness and this sense of curiosity. And that really allowed you to move through lots of different ideas and strategies and to begin to create a unique approach that really did work for you. There's so much wisdom there for all of us to learn from. Just have a light touch. Let it be an experiment. Lead with curiosity. Am I getting this right?
Absolutely. I think that, especially like when it came to goal setting, I was so hesitant at first to ever set goals because I was in a moment of my life where everything already felt like I had so much pressure on me and life was already overwhelming. And so I didn't want to set goals and then make this just another pressure-filled pursuit.
Yeah, you were over that. It's an old story.
I was so over that. Absolutely. And so I was like, well, what does this look like to do it playfully, to have delight in the things that we're setting goals? And I was like, also like, why do I think that goals have to be about writing and publishing an article or getting a promotion at work or like all that stuff? I was like, let's go down water slides. Let's see how many times we can go around the lazy river. Let's set a goal to go on mini dates with my husband every single week. Let's set a goal to go on an adventure once a month. But then I do think it can be so easy to slip into getting incredibly serious about that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we have to go on an adventure. We haven't gone on an adventure yet. We need to schedule it. We need to plan it. You can move into a posture towards things that are delightful that strip them of their delight.
This is a perfect moment to talk about habits, because what you're starting to describe, I think, is the difference between treating a goal, I'm using air quotes here, treating a goal as a habit that you need to form and reinforce and be sure that you get right all the time versus a ritual. Tell me a little bit about your journey with habits. What were you doing? And how did you realize that it wasn't working for you?
So I like habits. I have gotten obsessed about habit building at parts of my life. If I were going to quickly define the difference maybe between habits, practices, rituals, and routines, I would start out by, explaining that habits, first and foremost, are designed with the end goal being that they become unconscious and automatic. And I was at a place in my life where, because I had kind of stepped on the treadmill of life and things had kind of just been rolling and I hadn't been reflective or as intentional about them as I'd wanted to, I didn't really want to form more habits where I was just doing. I wanted that pause, that space, that break where we could be intentional about things. So when I think about habits, they're actions that are designed to eventually become automatic and unconscious. Whereas a practice, you want it to still maintain its consciousness, its intentionality. So we might think of routines then as being a series of habits that are stacked on top of one another. But the idea is that they should just go. Where with rituals are really designed to transform you from one state to another. And when a ritual loses its meaning, when it loses its intentionality, that's actually when we talk about empty rituals. So I always like to think about like a ritual is a routine with soul.
A ritual is a routine with soul. Give me an example.
So you hear a lot about like morning routines. And sometimes the difference between a morning routine and a morning ritual might just be your posture towards them, right? What I sort of think about is when I do the dishes, I kind of want my dishes to be a habit. I want to do them. I don't want to think about them. I'm cool just like doing the dishes. Yes, I can dissociate. Yeah. Yes, I can be dissociated while I do the dishes. I'm cool with that. I'll listen to a podcast. I'll do other things. I don't need to be fully present while I'm doing the dishes. But when I'm sitting down and I'm doing my morning ritual, when I'm pulling out my planner, when I'm reflecting on what do I want today to feel like? What are the things that if I did, I'd feel good. I'd feel satisfied. I'd feel cozy about at the end of the day. I don't want that practice to become so automatic and so unintentional that like I'm just doing it without really reflecting. And so for me, thinking about these moments that we need to transition from one state to another and being thoughtful and making them conscious rituals that we've designed with intentionality become really important. So maybe that's like transitioning from work to home. Maybe that is your evening ritual, which would transform you from the sort of the busyness of the day to the calm, I'm getting ready to sleep. Or at the beginning of the day, how do I move from groggy and grumpy to revived and energetic? And so for me, it's like locating where are those spaces in our days or our week that we need to transform from one state to another. And how do we consciously and intentionally design those moments to move us into those postures that we want towards them.
Can you tell me about one or two of your personal favorite rituals?
Yeah, probably my very favorite one is my morning ritual. For me, that really involves, usually I have a little bit of a spiritual practice. So I wake up, I go get my, coffee for the morning, my drink for the morning, and I'll come back into my office. This is my closet office. It's my special place. My office is my special place. And I get under a cozy blanket. I want to feel cozy. I want to feel relaxed. I oftentimes wake up in a little bit of an anxious state. My mind is already thinking through my to-do list, and I want to calm that down. And I want to enter my day calmly and intentionally. And so I engage in a little bit of a spiritual practice. For me, that's some sort of like a reading or a devotional. And then I'll journal a little bit around it. What did that prompt me to think of? From there, I usually move into looking at my day and what do I have on my calendar. I do some reflective thinking around what do I want my day to feel like? How do I want to show up today? What are the 3 most important things that I could do today to support that feeling and to ensure that I show up the way that I want to? From there, I might do some reading. I might do some sort of a creative project. my mind is really great in the morning. So if I have any deep work, if I want to write podcast episodes, anything that's creative, I try to sort of do in that morning time. And then I really just end my ritual by I actually take my blanket and I fold it and I lay it over the back of my chair. And that's just a way for me to mark that my ritual's over and now I'm going to go wake up my kids. And so that's probably my favorite. I also do have end of the workday ritual that's really helpful for me. I'll give you the short form version of it, or maybe the highlights of it, is like for me to just do a brain dump of anything that I didn't feel like I got to today and I don't want to forget the next day. And then from there, I do something called interstitial journaling, which is just a sentence that says, I just did a brain dump for the day, and now I'm going to get in my car, drive home, and I'm going to be present for my kids. And it's a way to sort of say, this is the mode we were in, here's the mode that we want to be in, and it just helps me kind of transition. And that takes like 5 minutes. My morning ritual is a lot longer. My afternoon ritual is a lot quicker. And I do have short versions of my morning ritual just in case I need to sleep in.
Yeah, I love that. There's a flexibility about all of this that I find really delightful. Just going back to what you were saying earlier, like, okay, we have these things that are supposed to be delightful. And if we're draining the delight out of them, like red flag, that's a problem. And that can happen with rituals. You have this ritual in the morning that is supposed to delight you. And if it doesn't, then it's maybe you need a tweak or a change. You can meet yourself really flexibly moment to moment. Listening to you talk about these rituals, I'm noticing that as you're talking about the rituals, like you're talking a little slower and a little softer, that like even just talking about the ritual, it brings you into a calmer space. And I love that I can tell that you are embodying your rituals by the way your body is responding as you talk to me about them right now. And that's what we want. We want these intentional transition zones in our day and in our life to be places of peace and soul and connection. That's really standing out to me right now, Danielle, as I'm listening to you share your incredible examples. It's just the way that it slows you down. Energetically, it slows you down. It slows the day down. It slows your mind down. And when we slow down, we're able, coming back to that well of emptiness, like when we slow down, we get to go deeper into that well, but in a much richer, fuller way. We get to go into that well and it doesn't feel quite so empty anymore. So I would love to connect these dots and hear that as you've developed this ritual practice, and I also appreciate what you were saying about habits. So like, okay, habits aren't bad. Habits are just things that we want to reinforce until they become unconscious. Cool. We all need them. They're effective. They're helpful. But like, let's not try to make unconscious every single thing in our life. That leads to the well of emptiness, right? When everything is unconscious, when there's no depth, when there's no intention, when there's no soul, we're going to feel exhausted and empty. So you were suggesting that like, sure, create some habits, but let's actually bring more energy, more intention to our rituals, to the places where we can be so awake and alive and connected to our day-to-day experiences. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So as you have gone on this incredible journey from the well of emptiness to creating more ritual in your life, what have you noticed happening with that feeling of emptiness that you were carrying around?
Well, I'll first start out and say, I don't really feel empty. Like my life is really full. That doesn't mean that I won't have flashes of that or, like a grumpy day or, like a low energy day or a disconnected day. But for the most part, I do. I feel really excited about my life. I feel like my life is full. I feel like it's full of possibilities. So like those places where uncertainty and not having a plan seemed really scary. Now I think I see like, oh, there's so many possibilities there. What could we experiment or play with today? And so I do think that's been really helpful for me. I will also just say, like, I know that my nervous system is better regulated. I know that my mental health is in a much stronger place. And I do deal with things not going as planned a lot easier. I don't really experience resentment in the same way that I did before. I think I was a little bit resentful of, sacrifices or choices where I might have to give something up. And now I think I'm like, okay, I intentionally know that this is the decision that I'm making, and I'm making it from a place of surety and being okay with the trade-offs here. And also I think I can embrace, we've talked a lot about both ands, the paradoxes of being human, that I can feel empty and full at the same time, that I can feel like my life is full of all sorts of joy and grieve at the same time. I can be wildly hopeful and incredibly disappointed all at once. And I think that there is something really beautiful about being able to hold those paradoxes together.
Yes, because it's an integrated experience, right? It's like, oh, I'm bringing all of me together. And so many of us we're just living on the surface of our lives, right? When you were on that tenure track and following the plan, right? We're living on the surface, and there's a layer underneath that we haven't yet explored. And once you started giving space to both the sort of productive doer planner part of your life up here and the inner spiritual deeper life down here, your whole life felt fuller. I love that. It felt fuller. You felt more integrated. Now you're here with me, and you're so full of life, and you're so full of purpose, like your connection to your purpose, to creativity, to play. It's all online, and it all comes from this intentionality that you bring to your life every single day. It is such an inspiration.
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering if, as we wrap up here, if you can give folks maybe just like a simple set of instructions if they're feeling inspired by this and they maybe want to try creating a ritual in their lives. Can you give them a simple way to experiment with their own unique ritual, starting right now?
Absolutely. So first, I kind of want to, as you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, this concept of purpose. I feel like my life has purpose, but I think that before I started this journey, I was like freaked out by purpose because it felt like so big, and I have to name one big purpose that my like wild and precious life will have. And like now I see it as like much more of like a process of continual discovery. And one of the ways that you can do that is through like establishing these rituals that create that space for continual connection with yourself and others. And so one, I would just locate the spaces in your day or your week. I think those are great units to start with. But where in your day or your week do you need to transition from one state to another? And those might be spaces that you might want to create a ritual for. And I'd start with one at a time. Yes. And then so once you've kind of figured out that space, I would also just name what is my current state and what's the state that I want to transition to. Because as you design your ritual, you want all of the choices that you make to help move you from that current state to the desired state. And then from there, I really like to make sure that you have an opening activity for your ritual and a closing one. And as you do that, so I teach something called the RISE ritual method, which involves reflecting, intentional planning, sensory activation, and embodying the story. But I kind of want to highlight sensory activation, that in some ways, how can you activate some sort of a sense through that opening or closing aspect of your ritual? Because our senses invite presence, and they're going to help create the transitory state that we want. And so, for me, the blanket's cozy and it's calm, and I kind of start there. And so I would really just say, if you could just start to name that state, that desired state that you want to move to, and to have a way to open and a clear way to close your ritual. And if you can just start there and do it in a way that also activates your senses, invites that presence, that right there is going to really get you a long way.
I feel that so deeply. And just coming back to the intention, right? What's the intention? Why do I want to transition from work to home, from, morning to creative space? Why? Why does this matter to me? if we can connect to the why, to the intentionality behind it, and then have the opening and the closing, we can just exist in the middle between the opening and closing with pure curiosity. What emerges? What do you discover? What do you feel? I hope that you'll be delightfully surprised. I hope something happens that you don't expect at all. That is what I love so much about you, Danielle, is your sense of play and your willingness to be delighted. This is such a great reminder for all of us, especially those of us who maybe are, just being a little too serious in life or in business right now, that we can just lighten it up a little bit and meet ourselves with intention, with joy, with a sense of fullness and appreciation for everything that we are creating in our lives. I'm really inspired. I can't wait to go back and re-listen to this and take notes and try some of this myself. Can you tell the listeners where they can learn more about you, about the Rise Ritual method, and anything else you want to share with the people?
Yeah. So you can find me at the Plan Goal Plan podcast. And there's loads of episodes about ritual, about planning, about goal setting. And I do that all with, I would say, a women-centered, delightful approach to planning and goal setting. And also I do have, through that, you'll be able to find a link to my Bold and Balanced mini course, where we're going to take a women-centered approach to deleting, delegating, and automating. I do think that so many of the approaches to this have really come from a more masculine, I want to say like 93% of productivity books are written by men. And while I have learned so much from them, I do think that there are ways that women have a really unique way of moving through the world that can offer some really important insights to these things too.
We're going to share the link to your Bold and Balanced mini course, and I want to read your book about planning and productivity. Like, I'm over the rest of it, honestly. So, when can I expect to pre-order your book, Danielle?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to get that on my. That's like a 2026 goal here.
In the meantime, we'll just have you back for more podcast episodes so you can keep walking us through everything that you're creating. But I see it. I see your planning book on the shelf at my bookstore, and it's the only one anybody wants, because it is the most integrated. It is the plan that is blending the masculine with the feminine, with the joy, with the creativity, with the flexibility. You are bringing all of the ingredients that are the most delicious and delightful to me. And I'm so grateful that you joined us here on Deeply Rested to talk about your story and to share your wisdom. I would love to have you back again. Thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you. This was a joy.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Deeply Rested. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love to invite you to join the Deeply Rested weekly newsletter. You can sign up at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. I hope to meet you in my inbox very soon.